Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable House leaders. Welcome to our press conference. For today, we have House Ad Hoc Committee on Marawi Rehabilitation and Victims Compensation Chairman and Lanao del Sur, 1st District, Representative Zia Alonto Adjong, and One Rider Party List, Representative Rods L. Gutierrez, one of the members of the 11-man House Prosecution panel. Before you throw your questions, let us allow our honorable guests to give their short opening remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. I would like to thank our media partners for joining us here in today's press briefing. I am very honored to share this day, briefing the media and updating the public with one of our prosecutors. Impeachment. So we are looking forward to your questions. Maraming salamat.
Morning po sa ating mga kaibigan sa media. We're glad to be here. I'm sure there will be more questions as our stories develop. Hope we'll be able to enlighten and answer most of them today. Salamat po.
Thank you, sirs. Tina Panganiban Perez from GMA7, you're recognized for today's first question.
For impeachment process, Representative Rods Gutierrez. Sir, former PCGG Special Counsel Generillo has filed a petition for mandamus before the Supreme Court to compel the Senate to constitute itself into a Senate impeachment court and proceed with the trial against Vice President Sara Duterte, citing the phrase "shall forthwith" in the Constitution. Your thoughts po?
Well, nabanggit na po natin ito, no? Naitanong na po dati kung ano po talagang ibig sabihin ng forthwith, and ang tendency po, we agree with the legal luminaries, pag sinabing forthwith, ang ibig sabihin po nito ay kaagad. Kaagad-agad. So, in line with that, I guess ito, yung taong bayan na po mismo, or at least one interested party, nag-file na po ng mandamus. Para sa kinalaman po ng lahat, ang mandamus po ay isang action dito sa Supreme Court in which ito ay relief na humihingi na aksyonan na po ng isang agency or branch of government ang isang bagay na dapat aksyonan. So, ibig sabihin nito, kapag nakikita ng isang tao na ang isang bagay ay responsibilidad na dapat aksyonan ng agency or branch, they seek relief with the Supreme Court. Mandamus po yung ginagamit. So, dito po nakikita po natin na according to, sino po yung petitioner, ma'am, if I may ask?
Sir, former PCGG Special Counsel Generillo. Catalino Generillo.
So, dating lingkod rin po naman pala sa gobyerno, sa PCGG, they saw it fit to seek redress before the Supreme Court to ask or to mandate the Senate to proceed with the impeachment trial. So, yun po yung ibig sabihin dito ng mandamos. Now, additional comments lang po siguro. Personally, well, as we've always mentioned po, kami po, nire-respeto po namin ang stand ng Senate bilang they have the sole authority and responsibility in relation to the subject of impeachment as the convening as the impeachment court. Ngunit as a personal opinion, ako po naniniwala po dun sa panig ng ibang mga luminaries na yung forthwith provision ng Constitution would mean agad. And I think that's what the mandamus petition is talking about. And so I would tend to agree with that petition po.
Sir, kumusta na po yung preparations ng prosecution panel?
Ongoing naman po. Admittedly, there are difficulties in the sense na dahil hindi pa po gumagalaw yung Senado, wala pa pong rules, hindi pa po namin alam more or less kung ano po mangyayari or what kind of proceedings they would require. So, as out of abundant caution, ang ginagawa po namin sa prosecution team ay general preparations for all scenarios po. Whether we're talking about yung timeline, whether we're talking about which processes would be allowed and disallowed, whether the help or the engagement of external counsel would be allowed, we're preparing for all situations po. Admittedly, kapag gumalaw na po yung Senado, at least preliminarily, at least regarding to the rules, kapag meron na po tayong mas idea kung which processes would be adopted from yung rules of court, which processes would be dealt without, I think that would be easier for us in the part of preparation. But in the meantime po, general preparation po yung ginagawa namin.
Sir, still for Kong Rog, on another topic, kasi may sagot po si Representative Pantaleon Alvarez sa comment nyo on the case he filed about the budget. I-quote ko lang po, ang sabi po niya, naiintindihan natin na minsan tingin ng Congress, korte sila, lasing sa kapangyarihan. Lalo na noong panahon ng Quadcom, kita nyo naman ayaw lang ng sagot mo, contempt ka kaagad, ipakukulong ka pa sa correctional facility kahit na may detention area naman ng House of Representatives. Pero tandaan natin, judicial power belongs to the court and not to Congress. Dito ang nangyaring krimen, nag-insert sila ng mga numero na iniba yung ibig sabihin ng legislative document. Go
And
ahead,
this was in relation to our statements po, no? From previous press con. Tama
yes,
po ba?
sir.
Well, we respect siguro po the opinion of the good congressman. Ang sa tingin ko lang po ay I'm not sure where that is coming from po. Kasi yung comments niya po, I remember, it's likening the Congress to a court na there was mention of probable cause po, no? Pero if I recall our statements correctly, we were talking about yung personal motivations that might accompany it, the timing of the case. Hindi pa naman po kami dun sa merits of the case itself. So wala naman po kaming sinasabi dun sa probable cause. At least ako personally, yung if I recall correctly, yung binabanggit ko is the timing of the filing of the case. Bakit na ngayon lang po? So definitely we don't want to prejudge no kung merong probable cause mo or hindi. In fact, what we mentioned, if I recall correctly, is that we welcome po, no, we respect the right of anyone, not just the good congressman, but anyone who would like to seek redress before the courts. So tama naman po yung ginawa niya. It's just that we don't agree. Personally, I don't agree with the mode, and I don't agree with the timing po, no? I mean, there was just doubt regarding that. But then for that response po, no, I feel like nalilihis po ulit yung issue instead of answering it head on po, no. But again, we respect it. So at the end of the day, nandun naman po yung kaso na file na po nila. So if we're going to talk about the merits, let's just see what they decide na lang po siguro.
Sir, you mentioned yung timing. May sagot po siya doon, ang sabi niya, nalaman lang nila yung insertions January 18, tapos pinag-aralan nila yung issue, but they were able to come up with a complaint within 2 weeks.
Opo. So if that is the answer to the timing, then I suppose we take their word for it. We don't want to color it with any malice or bad faith po, no? We take the statements as it is. Yung sa akin lang po, it's just that the timing that it would come out after the news of the impeachment, yun lang po naman yung naitanong po namin dito last time. And it's not even about probable cause po, no? Yung tanong lang po namin talaga is just the timing in general. But if more importantly, if satisfied po yung taong bayan sa sagot na yun, then I guess we'll take it for as it is po, no? On face value.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tina. Mela Lismoras from PTV4.
Hi, good morning po, Kong Zia, Kong Rog. Unahin ko lang po kasi naka-calendar na nasa house calendar na sa website yung TRICOM hearing bukas. May I just ask, ano po yung susunod na magiging hakbang ng House TRICOM kaya sakaling magpatuloy nga hindi pagdalo ng social media influencers and vloggers na nauna ng hinaina ng show cause order ng committee? And just to highlight, bakit po ba mahalaga yung pakilahok nila dito nga sa nagpapatuloy na investigasyon?
Meron natang show cause order na those invited guests who did not appear on the second committee hearing. So if there's no valid reason for their absence again this time, baka umakyat na yan sa siya nag-show cause order and then baka isupina na sila. I think the issue that the TRICOM is now discussing is very much important kasi ang age po natin talaga ngayon is it's information technology and we are using the internet as a space to exchange ideas and inputs. And sometimes, lalo na pag ganitong campaign period, talaga nagagamit ito to propagate fake news. I think all of us should agree that we need to regulate this, the dissemination of malinformation, disinformation. And the invited guests who are supposed to appear in last committee hearings are very active in the online discourse. And we hope that we can get some inputs that they might like to share to the committee so that we can formulate a much enabling law that would really reflective of the need to regulate itong open space in the internet. So sa akin lang, it's not really an issue. There's no reason for them to skip again the committee hearing. Dahil ito naman ay pinapakinggan naman natin ng lahat ng punto. No, hindi naman we're not actually running after these bloggers. We just hope that we can give them the proper venue where they can actually share their inputs, and so that we can also propose a legislation in order to regulate to counter the propagation of this hindi mo mapulis na paglaganap ng malinformation and disinformation. Why is it important? Because democracy should be based on the information should be based on actual facts. We have to provide the public with accurate information so that they can derive a well-meaning opinion. Hindi dapat based on something that isn't true. So I think that is the very anathema of how we uphold democracy. Kung ang mali ang impormasyon, mali talaga ang magiging opinion ng bawat tao, and that would reflect on the kind of system that we would have in the coming days or in the coming years.
I think nabanggit naman po ni Chairman Adyong most of the points, no. I agree that yung ating mga bloggers that did not attend, show cause order naman po yung na-issue, and there will be other remedies later on, like subpoena, should they choose not to attend. But we really do feel that importante po na mag-attend po sila, kasi nga po yung pinag-usapan po dito ay yung I think lahat naman po tayo ay magsasang-ayon na masama naman po talaga yung fake news, misinformation, malinformation. Kasi nga po, even kahit magkabilang panig po tayo kung ano-ano mga bagay, kung politika for example, no one can agree naman po na good for the country ang fake news. Relying on such tactics po talagang it's to no benefit to anyone. As we saw nga po sa previous hearing, kahit po there are personalities admittedly have different opinions on things. I believe it was a Chair Ace and there was a private person there, si Ms. Tikia, I think, and they had a productive discussion on po, which was helpful to the committee. It was very enlightening. So I think we have to reiterate po yung aming imbitasyon sa mga vloggers na ito, yung mga other personalities that were invited, that we're just looking for a proper discourse. Especially in consideration, why I think it's important is that we're already touching on the surface yung tinatawag na foreign interference. Nabanggit po ito by one of the resource persons, I think it was Press One, na there was a link between misinformation and allegedly Chinese-owned accounts, Chinese backing. There is allegedly a link between Chinese backing of misinformation in the West Philippine Sea and political campaigns for certain individuals in the country. So I think doon pa lang very important. I think another issue that we have to discuss thoroughly sa TRICOM is yung commercialization po ng vloggers. Freedom of speech, understandable po yun. It's a right of everyone. Pero pag binibenta mo na po yung iyong salita para sa salapi, di ba? If you are selling your opinion to the highest bidder, and if that highest bidder is a foreign entity, I think there should be some limitations. There should be some punitive actions po, no, in relation to that. And I think that's why especially important in TRICOM. Yung problem with the previous, in past years, masyadong nasanay po yung tao sa fake news. Nasanay na po tayo sa hyperbole. Nasanay na po tayo sa pagbibiro na we can't take anything seriously anymore. So that's one more thing. We have to be accountable for our words. I think yun lang po yung bottom line ng TRICOM. Yun na po.
Okay. And another question lang po, speaking, may mga nabanggit na kayong China, politika. Tanong ko lang din po sana yung reaksyon nyo dun sa mga naging matapang na pahayag ni Pangulong Marcos sa campaign rally ng Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas sa Carmen, Davao del Norte, kung saan na hinikayat niya yung mga kandidato ng administrasyon na sinabi niya ngang walang bahid ng dugo ng mga biktima ng EJK at hindi sunod-sunuran sa China. Hinikayat din ng presidente yung mga botante na wag hayaan hayaang bumalik muli ang bansa sa panahon ng dilim at lagim na tila tumutukoy sa nakaraang administrasyon. Ayon mismo sa Pangulo ay pumayag na gawin umanong probinsya ng China ang Pilipinas. Ibinugaw ang ating bayan bilang sugalan ng mga dayuhan at hinayaang umapaw ang dugo ng mga inosenteng mga bata na inagawa ng kinabukasan dahil sa kanilang pagpatay. Ano pong masasabi niyo dun?
Ako po, I think we welcome those remarks. Personally, gaya ng sinabi po natin in the last press con, it's about time po naging issue-based po tayo, especially for elections. Hindi na po tayo personality politics. During the last time that we had this discussion, I believe yung pinag-usapan natin dito ay kung ano yung stance po ng senador tungkol sa impeachment complaint. And now we have brought to the fore other issues po. No? Anong stance ng ating mga senador sa EJK? Ano ang stance ng ating mga senador sa China, sa West Philippine Sea. And I think it's a good thing, it is well appreciated po siguro na na-highlight po ito ng ating presidente. I'm not saying po no, that it should resort to, kasi yung iba po, based on those statements, may nagsasabi na smear campaign. I don't think it's smear campaign when we're just talking about issues po, no? We're talking about issues. How do these candidates feel about these issues? Where do they stand? So, I think it's very important now na sa taong bayan, dapat maalala po natin yung mga issue na ito kapag nagboboto na po tayo, bumuboto. We have to consider po where their stances. General statements naman po yun, but they are powerful statements. I think it really highlights po the need to really look into the credentials, not just yung achievements, but their stances po rin po talaga. So, personally, unfortunately, nagiging malaking headliner po yan, Team Pilipinas versus Team China. And syempre, doon tayo sa Team Pilipino, di ba? Team Pilipinas tayo. So, suriin po talaga natin kung ano po talaga yung stance natin. There will be a lot of campaign promises. There will be a lot of statements na he said, she said. But at the end of the day, saan po talaga sila talagang nakatayo? Yun po, I guess, yung issue doon.
Well, in addition to that, I think the president is coming from a position where the effects of these bad policies, the effects of this are still, we still continue to feel it. No? Being the president, meron naman siyang access doon sa nangyari na mga policy na hindi talaga epektibo. So I think that's where the president wants to be very clear about it na there are certain issues and policies before that we up to now nakikita natin yung effects, yung effect ng West Philippine Sea, the aggression of China against our fishermen, at sa Coast Guard, the effect of the POGO in the previous administration, ngayon, hanggang ngayon, niraramdaman natin yon at marami pang iba. No? So I think the President wants to track a direction where these senators these possible senators, no, at mga candidates, would have to really draw the line whether they want to pursue his administration's policies of, number one, we can curb illegal drugs and illegal syndicate without even making so many bodies lifeless in the streets. There are certain policies that we can implement without necessarily resorting to violence. That's number one. Where do you stand on this ground? Number two, when it comes to the incursion of China, where do you stand on this ground? Would you be for the Philippines and protecting the integrity of the country? Or where do you be koto to the Chinese incursions? So I think this is a very clear position where the president wants to educate the public that, the effects of the past policies of the past administration hanggang ngayon nararamdaman natin, and we're doing so much to addressing those questions. So ako naniniwala ako dun sa stand ngayon ng presidente na sa panahon ngayon ang politika hindi dapat tama nga yung sinabi ni Kong Rog, hindi dapat siya personality based. The people should be given information, in the accurate information, so that they can decide on their own, not based on which person they would prefer to see there in the Senate, but based on the candidate's stand on certain important national issues.
Opo, and sorry, last na po, Kong Sia. Just a quick follow-up. You have a statement din po kahapon about, just to have it on record, can you just please elaborate your statement na NBI should look into former President Duterte's kill threat against senators?
Well, it's so disheartening, no, for public officials, especially those who have served as our president, to say these things, no, to threaten. I mean, say na mas madali lang sabihin na patayin na lang natin yung mga senadors. In the past, we've heard hymns threatening illegal pushers, drug syndicates, etc. Napatahin itong mga illegal drug lords, tsaka mga illegal pushers. But he mentioned that he made those threats in the context of the war against drugs to curb, to free our streets from the illegal drugs syndicate. But this time it was said in a context where he has candidates, and there are also candidates on the other side running for the same position. So medyo hindi siya para sa akin. It's really it concerns, it should concern all of us, because hindi dapat man normalize yung salita na patayin, or even sa mga, if you go to mga airports naman, di ka naman talaga po pwedeng mag-bomb joke ng, yung bomb threat na jokes, kasi automatically you'll be, mapupusasan ka. How much more, for example, for say that out in the public. But it's the issue really, my point that I'm trying to drive at is, if you're an individual who enjoys or wills a certain influence, you have to be more circumspect about what you say, because people, your followers, may think na seryoso ka. That's why, pag sinasabi na joke, when will it end? We don't know which one is joke and which one is not. So I think we have to be more more circumspect about how we say things out in the public, especially if the occasion calls for a choosing of new leaders in the country. So yun yung aking position doon at pananaw, na hindi dapat agad-agad natin ma-normalize at ma-trivialize yung mga threat na dali-dalian mo lang sabihin, pumatay or patayin.
Thank you, Mela. Up next, we have a question from Elson Kismorio of Manila Bulletin.
Hello, Kongs. Good morning po. My goodness. Reaction lang po, according to the latest results of the Tangere survey, 73% of Filipinos daw would prefer na humarap si Vice President Duterte sa impeachment trial. So that's like 3 out of 4 Pinoys. Your thoughts po?
Po, I think it's a true reflection na lang po, no, siguro. Nandiyan na, may survey na po na that doesn't speak po siguro on the support or not of the impeachment. It just really speaks about the trial itself. At kung gusto ng taong bayan ay magkaroon na tayo ng trial. The issues are very clear, the questions are clear, and I think all we need now are the answers and the proper venue that they have always sought. As mentioned before, these issues, hindi po yan bago sa atin. We've had our hearings in the budget. Hindi naman po na we were not afforded the opportunity with the appearance and the answer. We had our good government committee. Didn't afford us also yung appearance and answer. Not the proper venue daw po. When it came to the Quad Committee and questions on certain aspects of the EJK, did not appear, or when she appeared, hindi po the proper venue. It chose not to take the oath. All of these roundabout ways, only to say po na parang hindi po yung proper venue. Ngayon po, we have the opportunity. An impeachment court is the proper venue. 73% of the Filipinos agree that this is the venue. Dapat na po siyang tumayo dito and to answer these allegations and to finally put to rest all of these allegations. Whether ako, personally, of course, as part of the prosecution, I believe in this case. I believe na that we can establish guilt. But for most of the Filipino people, whether we succeed in establishing guilt or not, at least to clear the air already po, stand and be answerable for this. And I don't know if that survey would have any effect kasi as it stands, nakalimbo pa po tayo, hindi po nako-convene yung impeachment court. But I think that's just to be expected po yung survey results. Wala namang may gusto na may tanong na hindi na isasagot po, no? I think it's very clear to the Filipino people and we want answers. Yun lang po.
In addition to that, I think in the bar of public opinion, it validates why the House of Representatives says, most of us, most of the all the members of the prosecution that it has to be the impeachment trial has to proceed, no, as what the framers of the constitutions say, no. There's a difference between how do we quantify, how we define in actual term, no, in actual timeline, yung word na forthwith, no. I think the framers of the Constitution, as supported by this 73 survey, says that impeachment trial is so important that it has to proceed without any delay. So nagsasabi lang yan, it only validates what the Constitution says na forthwith without any delay. Again, but again, we still maintain our position that the House of Representatives with our prosecutors will work according to the timeline that would be set by the Senate once they convert the institution itself into a impeachment court.
Thank you, Elson. Is Rosalie Cas from UNTB here? Lumabas. Okay, we will just entertain first the questions from Earl Tobias of IBC 13.
So, good morning, Kong Zia, Kong Rog. Hi po. Kong, sundan ko lang po yung tanong ni Ate Mela. Kasi this morning, sa mga prominent na international broadsheet, headline po yung threat ni former President Duterte. Hihingi lang ako ng reaction, sir, na kasi sabi ni Kong Joel nung nakaraan on BP Sara's side, dun sa threat naman versus our Pangulo. Sabi niya parang international embarrassment yung nangyari dahil nasulat nga sa mga broadsheet yung naging threat na ni VP Sara. And now, former President Duterte naman has these threats and nandito ngayong looming election season. So ano lang po yung reaction as a lawmaker na this is the kind of traction na nakukuha sa Pilipinas, specifically this season of the time?
Yung sinabi ko, that's why it's disheartening eh. Kaya nga sinasabi natin, we have to be circumspect about the things that we say out in public. Kasi in the first place, kung naka-attract siya ng negative attention, it's because of the statement in itself is negative. 'Di ba? Ano bang purpose mo doon? Ba't mo sinabi 'yon? To not only threaten candidates. Of course, we're in a generation that the information is so fast that it travels faster than the speed of light. So naturally, that would really land on print and on news, online news. So kaya nga sinasabi natin, sa mundong ito, hindi lang tayo ang nag-uusap-usap because of the information sharing and the globalization. One news from one certain part of the world will travel fast to another country. So I guess it's a matter of holding ourselves not only accountable to the things that we say, but we have to choose our words correctly, no? Especially if we have a certain degree of power and influence over a certain group of people. In this case, sa whatever you call it, in whatever angles you may, talagang hindi dapat po natin payagan na man-normalize yung salitang pagpatay at pagbomba. Kasi nga, hindi lang ho yan sa aking opinion. Pero even po sa ating mga polisiya, batas hindi talaga ho po. May penalty ho talaga yun. Sabi ko nga sa mga airports, if you throw a bomb joke, talagang pupusasan ka. Diba? Aarestuhin ka talaga.
Kung given that weight, and speaking of accountability, pursue ko lang yung angle. Do you think it's high time na meron ng pag-iimbestiga na gawin in case na maulit? Kasi simula pa lang naman to, proclamation rally pa lang yon. And usually, ang pattern is that kapag may nag-react, katulad nito, may statement kayo na bago, maririnig ng kabilang panig, and then of course, they are free to also have their opinions back. Pero in case na ganito yung maging pattern pa rin, dapat ba mas appropriate action ba yung meron talagang cases na ma-file or maimbestigahan na yung ganitong klaseng pagbabanta?
Well, if we believe in the phrase that no one is above the law, it should be applied to everyone. Diba? Kung ang ordinaryong tao, inaaresto mo dahil nag-joke lang siya ng bomba or may papatayin, I don't see any reason why it should also be applied to a certain individual simply because he's higher in stature or in influence.
Thank you, Earl. Rosalie Cas from UNTV.
Good morning po, Kongs. Si retired Supreme Court Associate Justice Ascuna said, election may be reasonable delay for the impeachment proceedings kasi katulad po ng impeachment na it talks about the accountability of public officials, ganun din po yung election. Pero si election lawyer Makalintal said, campaigning for the 2025 elections is not a valid reason to delay the impeachment proceedings. Kayo po bilang re-electionist and si Kong Rog po, miyembro ng House Prosecution Panel, is election a reasonable delay for the impeachment proceedings?
Well, of course, those are opinions from esteemed legal luminaries and split siguro yung decision on that depending on who to ask. Pero ako personally po, I mean, the fact that I'm here, that I'm working, I'm not campaigning, I am of the opinion po na this is a constitutional duty that cannot wait. Ako po naniniwala na ang mandato po natin dito, what we are elected for, is not to run for a second campaign, but to faithfully fulfill the duties that we have sworn to uphold and to do within this term. It doesn't matter po kung magiging, kung nandito pa rin kami sa 20th Congress, sa 21st Congress, if we don't do the job in the 19th Congress. For as long as nandito po kami, we have to pursue what we are mandated to do. And I think, I truly believe that the Constitution, ang ating saligang batas, klaro po yun. Mandato po natin ito. This is not legislative, it is constituent power. And all the more, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the context of that, they were not even talking about the prosecutors po, no? I think the context of that was the Senate Impeachment Court. And it's a continuing body, and there are 12 senators who are not up for re-election. And the 12 senators that are up for re-election, I don't think all of them are for re-election naman po, no? But it's a continuing body, and they can still pursue its constituent powers if it chooses to do so. So, sorry, in a roundabout way, ang sinasabi ko lang po, I don't believe that it is sufficient reason po to delay. I think it is a constitutional mandate that has to be complied with immediately po, forthwith.
Nabanggit niyo po kanina, Kong Rog, na general preparations po yung ginagawa niyo. Pero how does the prosecution panel prepare in case hindi pa po mag-umpisa yung impeachment proceedings pero mag-resign na po si VP Duterte?
Not to boil down to academics po, no? Pero there are two schools of thought. We've never reached that point po before. I mean, there was an opportunity before, but they did not pursue it po. I believe that there was a resignation, tapos hindi po na-pursue yung impeachment itself. But ako personally, I believe that the Constitution is clear. The purpose of impeachment is, one, removal from office, and two, the penalty of perpetual disqualification of holding a public office. And I believe resignation, while it might avoid the first penalty, the second penalty is still there po, no? And I don't think you should take away from the power from the Senate Impeachment Court to impose that second penalty just by simple resignation. So I think that's where I personally stand. We leave it, of course, to the wisdom of the Impeachment Court if they will still pursue it. Sorry, and to answer the question, tuloy pa rin ang preparation po, no? So we are still anticipating, even with the resignation, that would depend po the timeline, no? But we would still prepare for it. If there's a resignation, but the impeachment court says tuloy po, then we will be prepared. If there is, if the resignation happens during the trial, we will be prepared. Yes po.
Ako, in addition to that, I think the process of the impeachment trial is not tied up with the resignation of a certain official na impeach, di ba? Parang I think it's more of how the Constitution would really would ensure really that if the Congress in this case na impeach si VP Sara, and automatic the Senate would have to really convert itself into impeachment court para mag-decide kung ano yung magiging ruling o ano magiging conviction or anong maka-quit ba siya. So I think it's more of not really tied up with that premise, but it's more on the operation of what the Constitution mandates for Congress to do in terms of impeaching a certain public official.
Sorry po, kasi last time nabanggit po ni Kong Defensor na nagsimula na ng Division of Labor sa 11 House Prosecutor panel po. Kayo po ba ay meron na rin pong particular na article of impeachment na hahawakan?
I'm not sure po no kung anong division of labor pa po yung nabanggit ni Kong Defensor or fellow prosecutor po no, co-prosecutor. I'm as far as I'm aware wala pa po akong individual the preparations in general. Although there are talks already at the division, there are leanings already pero wala pa pong final. So as it stands po, we're still preparing for the whole thing in general kasi we have to be familiar with the whole impeachment complaint. And yung specialization would come later on po. I could be mistaken, baka mas updated po si Kong Defensor. But as far as ako po, as far as I know, wala pa pong specific po.
Pero hindi rin po kayo nagpaabot ng communication dun sa secretariat or kung sino man po yung nagsasabi kung kayong tatanungin anong preferred nyo pong article of impeachment na hahawakan?
There were informal talks already, and in fact, there were already talks about the strong suits of certain prosecutors, which complaints are they most, which articles are they most familiar with. So, to an extent, I think baka yun po yung tinutukoy ni Kong Defensor po.
Ano daw po yung sa inyo, sir? Yes.
Personally, as I've always mentioned, I'm more familiar with Article 2 in confidential funds. I personally want answers. Hindi po na isagot yun. It would be my honor to take on that article to ask the questions that were left unanswered during the committee hearings. Yeah. Pero aside from that, any other article, I mean, we're willing to do our duty. Pero if you're going to ask me yun po personally, yung aking panindigan.
Thank you, Rosalie. Yanes Kapanti from GMA Online. Please ask your questions.
Sir, I'll ask about two different topics. Yung first, yung sa anti-disinformation legislation, I understand that's on the table. Are you looking at it as a criminal case? Or are you considering yung civil case na lang in terms of punishing peddlers of disinformation online? Because I believe during the last hearing, scholars were, warning about a legislation na may criminal in nature, given that anybody can just say any unfavorable reporting as fake news and file a criminal charge. So, is that on the table? Na criminal charge or maybe civil case? Kasi one of our colleagues recently won a case, Atom Araulio, 2 million yung fine for red tagging them. So, involving Ms. Badoy and Mr. Celis. So, ano ba yung mga kinoconsider ng House na legislative remedies?
Just to answer plainly po, no, as of now, anything goes po, no. We're in the early stages of our committee hearings, and it could very well be civil or criminal or both po, no. As it stands, if you've been following a hearing, preliminary pa lang po, we're only getting to the meat of it. But as a personal stance, I do believe nothing precludes a criminal punishment for the things that we seek to avoid po here. Why? Personally, we already have slander and libel naman po, no? These are criminal in nature, hindi naman po yun civil in our jurisdiction, and it's constitutional. So in the fact, we just have to be very careful with the tests that were already laid out by jurisprudence. We have clear and present danger. We have to consider yung chilling effect that it might have upon journalists and on freedom of expression. But with that said, I believe there is a way that we can really balance yung interest natin, even with a criminal nature. Because one thing that we see po, especially, kasi po, there are multiple factors to this disinformation. We're talking first and foremost about individual acts that might be deemed punishable. And you could liken that to libel, you can liken that to slander. But you also have to consider yung organizational. Yung nakikita po natin na parang makinarya na po yung sasagawa ng disinformation. How much more pag makinarya being funded by a foreign entity? Ako personally, I think that should be criminal po . kapag binibenta mo yung opinion dun sa foreign adversary that would have an interest of putting our society in disarray. So I think we should be open to a criminal nature to this bill, but definitely the bare minimum also considering putting civil.
In addition to that, no, actually, the committee TRICOM is born out from the privileged speech of Chairman Ace Barbers, and basically, if you've listened to the speech of Chairman Ace Barbers, it's more on how do we regulate the operation of these social media platforms, no. Remember, meron naman talagang libel, nanalo na nga sabi mo si Atom Araules. So there's already that there's already the way on how we can file complaints or libel cases against those who are spreading malinformation, misinformation against a certain individual or organization. But the case that we need to really strengthen here and to look into is how to regulate, because according to the information that we gather from our last hearings, talagang pumapasok na siya doon sa national security issue. So I think that's what Kong Rog is trying to explain kanina, na if it's about individual cases, there are already laws that govern yung filing of cyber libel, filing of libel against. Pero on the more collective way of looking at it, yung security ng ating bansa ay napapasok na nitong mga operators online, na kumukuha sila ng mga amplifiers, I would say, dito sa local scene, na nagsaspread din ng misinformation and malinformation, which I believe ang DICT at saka yung sa anong agency na yun nagsasabi talaga na this is something that we should look into, and to have a law that would regulate itong klaseng pamamaraan at pagpapalakad ng mga ganitong klaseng online operators. So I think that's where we can now finally probably open the possibility in exploring whether we can file or we can make it something that's punitive as a criminal cases or charges na po pwedeng ipataw sa mga ganong klaseng operators.
Thank you, sir. Yung second question ko on Marawi compensation law. Hingi lang ako ng update, sir. Understand since the law was passed, every year, a little over 1 billion lang yung funding. At that rate, parang when are we going to finish compensating the victims? 2017 pa kasi yun, sir.
Yeah, actually,
I mean,
that's the...
di ba, parang how long will it take,
Well,
given na ganun lang yung budget every year?
I agree. Well, the bare minimum actually required by the MCB law is 1 billion at hindi dun bababa. So mas pwede pa siyang tumaas. In fact, itong previous na budget hearing natin, yung GAA, meron na ibigay na more than 1 billion. I think 2 billion yung first starting na fund ng MCB. And on top of the 2 billion, may dinagdag na 1 billion. But it's also, according to the DBM, kasi nag-usap kami, the arrangement is that since the MCB is still accepting yung mga yung mga petition and other applications for the claims, but medyo matagal eh. So, the moment that they have verified, done with the assessment and the finally determining kung sino talaga yung award, how much would that cost for the damage of properties, etc., based on fair market value, that's the time that they can actually request for the budget. So ang nangyari is in actuality nung disbursement of the budgets, it's more than 1 billion pesos. I think nag-reach na siya ng mga almost 4 billion. But what you're mentioning kanina, yung 1 billion, is actually that's the bare minimum na dapat na may pondo sa MCB. But it can go up, and we have experienced that in the last year, sa fiscal year natin of 2024, tumaas naman talaga siya. Yung utilization ng pondo, it's more than 1 billion actually. It's more than almost 4 billion. Kasi natapos na rin nila i-verify at saka i-vet yung lahat ng mga claims.
Sir, 4 billion na yung napamigay.
I'm
Tama?
not sure kung exact amount, but it's more than 1 billion. It's almost 3 billion. You can run down the amount from 4 to, I think, mga 3, kung di ako nagkakamali. I don't have the exact figure, but it's more than 1 billion. Yung 1 billion kasi yun lang naman ang requirement na budget ng MCB, according to sa batas.
Oh, yes. Pero yun nga, sir, parang ilan na ba yung nakatanggap?
Yeah,
As against, ilan ba dapat lahat yung makatanggap at ilan na yung nakakatanggap so far?
Yung dapat na makatanggap based on dyan sa verified na mga nagfa-file for the claims. Kasi kaya kailangan mo ng verification kasi kailangan mo talaga ma-determine kung how many really are eligible to receive the compensation packages. Now, as to how the exact number of households, I cannot give you that exact amount, exact figure, kasi ongoing pa rin talaga, kasi kaya mga vetting process. But definitely, I agree with you, 1 billion is not enough to compensate the number of victims displaced during the Marawi siege. I think if 1 billion, tatamaan na tayo ng mga ilang taon. No? So I think we have to really set a certain amount where we can say na a portion of those who are yung death claims, dapat ganitong rate ang matapos, di ba? So I think ganun ng approach ng MCB ngayon. Yung mga damaged properties, ilan ba yung families na damaged properties, and how much should we allocate for these families to receive the actual compensation packages. So ganun po yung ginagawa nila. So they try to compartmentalize the different and varying compensation packages for each of the families, whether death claims ito, whether property damage ito, whether etc. o public asset ito. So ganun po yung nangyayari na process po ng MCB.
Ilan na po yung households na nakakuha?
Well, I don't have the exact figure right now, but meron pa talagang other claimants na up to now are still waiting to receive the actual compensation. But there are already families, quite number of families that have already received the compensation package. Ang naging problema lang talaga dyan is yung 4 na barangay. Kasi yun yung sinasabing hindi na sila makabalik doon kasi nga yung kung saan nakatayo yung previously yung mga buildings and mga bahay ay reclaim kasi yan na area and then it's public property. So that's the problem now that we're trying to solve. I think kailangan talaga silang ma-compensate. Hindi dapat mangyari yung sinasabi, although this is just the information that I received, na baka hindi sila maka-receive nga kasi the area, I mean the residences where they were that were located at that before the Marawi siege happens to be part of the public property. Public property. So that's the thing that we need to resolve nga. But according to the MCB law, kasi identified naman sila na part sila dun sa 24 barangays, MCB should receive yung mga claims nila, no? At they should receive request for compensation packages kasi yung 4 barangays identified naman dun sa mga areas na heavily damaged. So I think those are the things that we need to look into and then probably make some mandatory proposal once pumasok po yung 20th Congress. Hopefully nandito pa rin kami ni Kong Rog para at least maupuan namin yan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you po.
Thank you, Linesca. Let us proceed with the next questions from Bibi Angulio of ABS-CBN2.
Good afternoon po. Just going back to the Kill Senator's remark of former President Rodrigo Duterte, ano po yung mga, you urge the NBI to look into it, ano po yung mga nakikita ninyo na posibleng ikaso with those remarks?
Well, I think it's about it's about time para sa akin personally, in my opinion. It's about time that the law enforcement agencies to take seriously about this kind of rhetorics, diba? As to whether or not there is a validity or there's a merit for the NBI to pursue filing charges against President Duterte. That would depend on how they would probably proceed with the investigation. That's why magkakaroon ng investigation to make sure that there is really indeed a merit to file possible cases, no. Nakita naman natin dito sa Vice President Sara Duterte, still ang DOJ, they're still looking for possible filing of cases. When she made those threats against President BBM, First Lady and Speaker Martin Romualdez, I think the point that I'm trying to drive at is that let's draw the line when can we actually accept things as joke or as a mere as a simple ordinary rhetoric from that of a statement that actually causes harm to individual lives. So I think that's just the thing that I would like to drive at. Kung sinasabi po natin na kailangan seryosohin ho natin yung mga ordinaryo na tao pag sila ay nagbabanta or nagjo-joke man lang ng mga bomb threats ay inaaresto natin sila. Why can't we be selective in our application of that kind of law and policies?
Kong Rog, your thoughts on that? Meron po bang mga nalabag? Or in your opinion, ano po yung mga nakikita nyo na mga posibleng nalabag ng statement na yon na batas? Also, do you see it as possibly laying down the defense for the impeachment trial of the Vice President?
Of course, I'm a little rusty on criminal law, but I think what comes to mind is grave threats. That would be the first thing that you'd have to take a look into. I don't know if it would be parang a threat to direct assault, but at the end of the day, what's really important to take note lang po siguro, it's not the importance of anong may kakaso. I think we're just talking about, I agree 100% with Kong Adyong, it's about the normalization of these kinds of ganitong pananalita. Normal na po ba ito sa lipunan natin? Katanggap-tanggap na po ba ang mga ganitong mga binibitaw ng mga salita? It's come to the point na po no, na parang I can't believe we're going to say na it's normal to joke about killing, it's normal to joke about, yung mga ganun. So, what's scary especially is that under oath, nabanggit po, the one who uttered that word, nabanggit po na he did indeed kill people. So, where do we draw the line? And then after magsabi ng ganitong salita, later on, papasok yung interpreter, magsasabi na, biro lang daw po yun, hindi po yung totoo, hyperbole. I think we have to really take it seriously na po. Not so much in the extent, depends. If NBI finds probable cause, then there will be a case. But more than the case, we have to take these words seriously. We don't take it lightly. The senators have to beef their protection. Di natin alam. More than, even if the one who uttered the words is not serious, you cannot disregard the fact that he has a lot of followers. Paano kung sila po, they take this as a call to arms? What if ako naniniwala sa isang tao, sabi niya, patayin na lang natin to. Ako, maniniwala ko, okay. That's a problem with words. It emboldens people to do what might be, it might do wrong. So I think more important than the case is the principle. So to answer, roundabout na naman. To answer the question, I think grave threats, but more importantly, all preparations, consider it serious. Yun lang po siguro.
Going back to the impeachment naman, sir, are you optimistic? I know you mentioned that you agree with the complaint or petition filed before the Supreme Court to compel the Senate to convene as an impeachment court. But are you optimistic that the Supreme Court will grant that petition? Or can the Supreme Court order the Senate to convene as an impeachment court immediately?
Two things po, no? I think to clarify, I am optimistic I am of the opinion na talagang may kapangyarihan po yung Supreme Court to rule on this. I think it's the proper venue and that it is the remedy that they're looking for, the writ of mandamus po, for example. I think these are things that the Supreme Court will be fully empowered to do po talaga without talking about the merits yet. And the merits, I've already mentioned, sa tingin ko po, may merit naman po yung kaso, may opinion naman po na dapat ito ay mandato ng Senate to tackle the impeachment forthwith. But this is not to supplant po yung maaaring sasabihin ng Supreme Court. I'm optimistic of the chances, but I can't say that for sure gagawin po nila. I'm just saying na they have the power to do it. And eagerly anticipate po what the Supreme Court will do in this matter. Tama po ba? We're talking about the mandamus po, no? Yeah. So I eagerly anticipate po whether or not it's a favorable or unfavorable decision. Kami po bilang abogado, any decision by the Supreme Court gets added to our precedents po, no? It's added to the law of the land. So at least legally, there will be enlightenment on our part. It will establish precedent for future cases. But I am hopeful po.
May epekto po ba yung filing ng petition na ito sa paghahanda ng prosecution panel for the impeachment? For example, mas bibilisan po ba yung preparations or any effect po?
As mentioned po, no, we are preparing in general. We're preparing comprehensively. We are preparing for any scenario which includes any alterations to the timeline. As a matter of fact, when we were first elected to the position of prosecution, we were already preparing for a March trial po, no? So we were gearing up for that. Parang sa amin po, ready or not, pass your papers, di ba? So we have to prepare. Now, whether or not this would expedite the case or if by some reason it might even cause a delay, then we will still be prepared po.
Also, it was mentioned by Representative Defensor last Friday na may mga legal eagles who offered their to help doon sa impeachment trial. I wonder lang po kung kasama po dito si Attorney Catalino Generillo Jr.
Not that I know of. Of course, I'm not in a position yet to disclose, but personally, I'm not familiar po. It's my first time na po hearing the name. Just personal po yan.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Bibian. Let us now recognize Jelly Mendez from DWIC.
Sir, balikan ko lang po yung sa TRICOM po na gagawin bukas. Naglabas po sa isang interview si Attorney Trixie na regarding dun sa show cause order na nilabas sa kanya. Ayon daw po sa rules ng Kongreso, dapat daw 2 unjustified reason yung pagbatayan bago patawan ng show cause order. Pero yun sa kanya daw po is, inibitahan pa lang daw siya, pinatawan na daw siya ng show cause order.
I think that's part of the rules na, internal rules. I think she's questioning the internal rules of how the committee proceeds with this investigation. Kasi if it's an investigation, pag in-invite ka kasi, talagang you're expected to also grace the inquiry, no? The committee hearing. Kung hindi siya valid yung reason niya, talagang that's one way of really attracting the attention of the one that is, skipping the committee hearings to make it more, serious in a way of, by way of invitation, no? Sa show cause order, so that we would know kung valid ba talaga or hindi siya valid yung absence nung guest na yon. In fact, during the committee hearing, they were also had simultaneous. They went to the Supreme Court, I guess. They filed a certain, yes, they were there just to show that they did not honor the invitation of the Congress, but instead went to question the authority of the committee to conduct this investigation. So I guess that's where the committee TRICOM is currently at, no, when it comes to invitation to the guests who have missed or deliberately skipped the committee investigations. It's part talaga yan ng rules po ng bawat inquiry in aid of legislation.
Pinagbabawal daw
May
po sa...
power po ng subpoena power, in fact. We're given that power.
Sir, yung regarding po sa regulatory framework, pinagbabawal daw po nagmawa ng ganito sa saligang batas and labag daw po sa mga social media personalities and tinatapakan daw po nito yung malayang pamamahayag.
Before that, Mama, parang na-excite. Di pa ako nakasagot sa first question. Balikan ko lang po, Mama. Sa tingin ko po, yung based on the rules, that would depend. Minsan po yung committee may special rules. Although true, we have a general rule in inquiries in aid of legislation. Minsan may specific. On top of that, usually may precedents naman po. In the case of our other hearings, minsan absence lang ng isa, pwede namang show cause. But more important question po is, yung show cause lang naman, walang penalty po yun. Ang sinasabi lang po, please explain to this committee bakit absent po kayo. Parang nakakaduda po. Parang may nagbibilang ng cut po si Mama. Parang binibilang niya talaga ilang beses po siya pwede mag-absent. Parang, what is the purpose? Gusto niya ba, umiiwas po ba talaga sa committee? It really speaks of the motivation. Kasi ako lang po, whether 2 days or 1 day, pag tinanong mo kung bakit ako absent, sasagot lang po kitang tapat. Bakit ako absent? Bakit parang nagbibilang po siya? It really shows. And additionally, on top of that, nagbibilang na nga ng absence, pumunta pa agad sa Supreme Court, which is a bigger question. Wala pa ngang, I think, justiciable action. There's no cause of action. Pumunta na agad sa Supreme Court. Invitation pa lang po, tumakbo na po sa Supreme Court. I think it already tells us na tatakbo mga to. Ayaw po nilang managot sa kanilang mga the actions that they're doing. So, yun lang po on that first question. Nung una, banat ng banat, kung anong banat, tapos ngayon idadaan sa legal. I think it's time for some accountability. General theme of the day, accountability for our words. Now, in addition to that po, yung pangalawang question natin, ma'am, yung sa saligang
regulatory
batas.
framework po.
I'm not sure what the basis is po. No? Anything can be subject to our laws. As a matter of fact, media, kayo, who are the most protected by the right of freedom of expression and of the press and of association, you are regulated by franchise. You are under the jurisdiction. You are under our laws. No one is above the law. And even then, how much more yung individual lang po na if we're talking about yung mga social media personalities who are not even professionals. As individuals, wala nga po silang, ano po yung sa ating mga professional? KBP po ba yun? Diba? They have ethics and all that. May internal regulation. Tapos ito po na walang internal regulation. Ayaw rin po ng regulation from the government. I don't agree po. Sa tingin ko po, pwede naman po, it is properly within this legal batas. Admittedly, there will be a higher standard dahil we're talking about freedom of expression. But that is not absolute po, no? Kaya nga po, meron tayong mga kaso ng libel, may kaso ng slander. Kasi pwede po talaga tayo sumobra. So, I think that's what the regulation is about, to enforce na hindi po tayo susobra.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Rog, no? Wala naman, there's no such thing as absolute naman talaga eh. I mean, you have the right to say you express your own opinions, but it does not mean that you can do whatever you want with that kind of right. That's why may libel eh. Kasi you also need to be aware that there's a certain limit to your expression, to your right of expression.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Jelly. Next question will come from Marian Enriquez of TV5.
Good morning po, sir. Si NBI Director Jaime Santiago po, ako nga yung nagsalita po siya few minutes ago lang habang nagko-comment po ulit kayo regarding your statement doon sa political rally, yung speech po ni former President Rodrigo Duterte. And sinabi po niya rito, quote, mawalang galang kay Congressman Adyong, nag-instigate sila na mag-imbestiga, hindi naman sila yung tinatakot, yung mga senador. So dapat daw po yung mga senador ang magreklamo kung alam nila sila yung tinatakot o pinapatay. Also, dinifferentiate po niya yung kay VP Sara, yung pagkaka-deliver daw po ni VP Sara, magkaiba raw po yun. Ang sabi po ni NBI Director Jaime Santiago, sa political rally, talagang nagjo-joke lang siya. Part ng rhetorics ng political speech. Your comment. And also, Comrade, if you wanna.
Well, again, it's... well, I respect the position of NBI Director if that's how he sees it. Pero, yun nga yung point is, do we allow this kind of rhetorics in the first place? Do we actually normalize this kind of talks? Especially if it's uttered in a very important event like a proclamation rally, that would speak about. I don't know how the NBI director sees it, but we are not instigating. We are merely trying to convey a message where if there's a policy that any threats No matter how you say it, utter it, whether it's a joke or not, you are not allowed to say things about killing other people. No. We are actually trying to convey a message where, in the case of the former president, where he somehow has the license and permit to say anything he says. He can tell you, "I will kill you." He can tell you, "I will kill him," and then get away with it. I mean, it's time really to draw the line. When do we allow these things, these kind of talks, to go unscathed and without even with a sense of impunity? I beg to disagree, and I don't want to again. I respect the position of the NBI director, but then again, this is something that should be taken seriously for an NBI director, for someone who is in charge of really of making sure that such talks and such rhetorics don't go overboard as to causing harms and direct as probably causing other people to really act on a certain on the statements made by this influential person is something that should be not taken lightly. No, it's so unfortunate to hear that from the NBA director. Again, hindi naman dapat kami ang actual na ma-threat para kami manawagan na hindi dapat ito mangyari. It should not be taken that way na dapat ikaw mismo ma-feel na ma-threaten para magsalita kung ano dapat ang tama. Ang mali talaga. Maski kanino yung sinabi, maski sinabi sa kung hindi man ikaw direct na threat or ano, basta sinabi ay mali, hindi tama. I think according to ethical standards, it should be out of bounds. I mean, it doesn't take one to be threatened physically, like me, directly, to say that things are not right to say out in public. So, those talks saying that patayin ang 15 na senador is hindi po dapat sinasabi yun, hindi po dapat tama yun. Wala pong dapat na lugar yon sa ating society at sa ating lipunan.
In addition lang po, no, I think it was already said mostly by Kong Adyong, but I would tend to agree. Personally, for one, I don't think it matters kung sino yung... I don't think Kong Adyong was supplanting himself as a complainant. I don't think he's filing a case. So I don't think the question of who is complaining to the NBI should be a question here. Nag-statement lang si Kong Adyong of what he believes should be done. And I think it shouldn't be dismissed so early. I think personally we respect, of course, the good NBI director. Pero this is coming from someone who has admitted to previously killing before. So it's not in the same way na ako na wala pa akong pinapatay tapos magbiro po ako. I don't think it's the same way, especially because it's tainted by political drive. Now, it could be political rhetoric. He could be right. But I think he should at least entertain the idea. Hindi po yung dinidismiss right away. Preliminary investigation, if they see wala naman talagang kinontratang magpatay sa 15 na senador, diba? At the very least, abundant caution, I think. But we respect the NBI director if that's how he sees his job, if namimili po siguro kung alin ang iimbestigahan at hindi. But I just side by Kong Adyong na his statement that it should be taken seriously. Yun lang po.
Thank you, Marian. Before we conclude our press conference, we will entertain two phone-in questions from Willie Delgado of Radio 630 and Sandro Chon of Billionario TV. The first question will come from Willie Delgado. Sir, may idea na ba ang prosecution team kung paano tatakbo ang hearing based sa ipinasang articles of impeachment, articles 1, 2, 3, o depensa, sa kung ano ang unahin ng depende sa kung ano ang unahin ng impeachment court, and then may prepare ba kayong articles na magandang unahin pag-usapan sa impeachment?
Without speaking it on behalf of the body po, no, we're not in that capacity. Pero sa tingin ko po, well, one, as mentioned, wala pa pong kaming alam sa rules po namin. Since the impeachment court has not been convened, no rules have been issued yet. We don't know if we can alter the order of the articles of impeachment. At the end of the day, it would still be the decision of the senator judges as sitting as an impeachment court. As a matter of fact, even if we present our articles this way, if the rules say na they can choose which articles to put forward, with if the senator judges have that discretion, then yun pong masusunod. But as far as we're concerned, I don't think there will be any rearranging. Of course, this is nothing final. We're still just doing general preparations. But I think as the order of the articles are laid out, logically, yun po yung masusunod. But at any time, that could change. And if the senator judges sitting as an impeachment court in the rules will allow us to vary it, there is a possibility po, no, that we will change the articles on whatever criteria that the prosecution may see fit. But as far as ako personally, as I'm concerned, ang nakikita ko, logical naman po. You will still follow Articles 1 to 7.
Thank you, sir. Last question from Sandro Ochona. This is regarding doon sa Carmen Davao del Norte campaign rally of Alianza. Nag-post si Attorney Israelito Tarion of PDP Laban. According to him, kawawa daw yung mga polis ginawang rallyista sa campaign rally ng admin senatorial slate. He was referring, sir, doon sa mga civilian police na wearing civilian clothes. Pero sabi ng PNP, normal police protocol ito, camouflaging ang tawag nila. But because of the statement daw ng PDP Laban, na-compromise po ba ang security ng Pangulo?
Apologize po, I'm not too familiar on the issue. I don't think it would be proper for us to comment po, no. I'm not, although just in general terms po siguro, I think it is normal procedure for camouflaging. I don't think not anything prohibits the PNP to, especially given the fact that the president is, present. So all the more, I think, on high alert yung PSG and the PNP. Protocol naman po yun kapag dumarating po isang VIP, how much more the president, that there will be both visible security and invisible security. But whether as to, ano pa po yung other
Ang
allegations?
pinaka-question niya, sir, yung exposure na ginawa ng PDP Laban na parang nagiging practice ito ng PNP kung na-compromise yung security ng Pangulo.
I think that would be an internal matter that we as, we're here to speak on behalf of the House. I don't know if we are in the position to make a comment on that allegation po.
President is exposed to danger. Is that the question?
O kasi, sir, parang ginawang social media post ng PDP Laban, si Attorney Tarion. So, ang tanong lang ni Sandro, kung ini-expose yung mga ganito, would that compromise the security of the president?
Okay. Yeah,
Although
yeah.
tama kayo, sir, standard practice according to
Yeah,
PNP.
standard practice, yeah. I don't know the intention of that person, why he's sending out these photos of the uniformed personnel or in PNP or in naka-civilian PNP, no?
Civilian PNP, sir.
Yeah, I think it has to go to questioning the very intention of why you are compromising the security of the president, no? I think the reason why the PNP is doing that is simply because they want to make sure that even in the crowd, dapat meron talaga. Kasi ang perimeter, sa police kasi sa perimeter lang sila, yung protocol nila, they have to be on the side eh. But we are not sure kung since doon mismo sa crowd merong nakatago doon. So I think it's tama nga sinabi ni Kong Roch, it's a standard protocol talaga na they have to mix in with the crowd so that kailangan makita nila kung ano yung hindi lang yung sa perimeter but within in the midst of while the rally is ongoing para po to make sure that the president is given the necessary security for his own protection. So kung ilalabas mo to and probably i-break mo yung protocol ng PNP, I don't know what would be the penalty for that. Pero again, di natin alam kung intention. Pero kung ang intention niya is para magbigay ng alam mo yun yung message na breaching security protocol, that's going to be another issue for the PNP to really decide on how they would proceed. But again, it's the intention kung ano yung intention mo, kung bakit mo ine-expose yung ganitong that tantamounts to breaching the security protocol of the PNP police to make sure that the president is safe whenever or wherever he is.
Thank you, sirs. Parting words for today.
Thank you again po to our media friends and for indulging us for this more than an hour press con session. I hope we're able to answer your questions and sorry wala si Pao and si Pami, wala kayong sound bites today.
Kong Zia.
Yes, again, marami pong salamat sa ating mga media partners. Marami pong salamat sa inyong mga katanungan. At sana po na klaro po namin yung mga iba yung mga gustong itanong at sana po naibigay din po namin yung tamang impormasyon sa ating mamamayang Pilipino. So marami pong salamat. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Thank you. House Ad Hoc Committee on Marawi Rehabilitation and Victims Compensation Chairman and Victims Compensation Chairman and Lanao del Sur First District Representative Zia Alonto Adjong and One Rider Party List Representative Rods L. Gutierrez for joining us today. To everyone, maraming salamat po uli. Magandang tanghali po.